Hey all, it's Dave here. You might notice something a little bit different about this video. It's on my main YouTube channel rather than on the Answers in Reason channel. There's a few reasons for this. First, let me explain what the purpose of the video is and you'll kind of understand. When I'm on Twitter, I'll often see a tweet from someone asking for people to list their favorite atheist Twitter user or favorite atheist content creator. When one of these pops up, I generally go through the thread to see if there are any interesting new content creators or Twitter users that might be worth following. After all, that's one of the points of these kind of threads, to share content creators and Twitter users that the individual might look up to, enjoy, share useful information, make good arguments, and that kind of thing. However, there's one major problem that always pops up in these kind of Twitter threads. What we often see are the same names being listed over and over. It's usually the popular content creators like Apologist, Matt Dillahunty, Aaron Raw, Godless Engineer, those kind of names being listed over and over. Not just in every thread, but from many people posting in those Twitter threads. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that there is something wrong with this. They are obviously popular content creators and popular Twitter users, and have worked hard to get there in most cases. This means, though, that many of the less popular but still very deserving content creators and Twitter users often get overlooked or ignored. Usually when one of these types of Twitter threads appears in my feed, I generally try to list a bunch of my favorite YouTubers and Twitter users. Ones that are lesser known names in the community, and though some that I think are worthy of support or following, or at the very least checking out. The people I recommend often offer content different to the norm, or at least different to the content creators that are usually listed in these kinds of threads. They also offer a different kind of discussion. Usually the discussions aren't centered around mocking or insulting or arguing, but around the exploration of ideas. It's a more measured kind of discussion. Of course, the problem is when I do this, I also tend to forget many names in the heat of the moment. Plus, Twitter character limits often make it impossible to list everyone. Which brings us to the point of this video. The intent of this video is to list all of the content creators and Twitter users, which I think are often overlooked, underappreciated, and worthy of at least being checked out by other atheists. I want to say, before moving on to the list, that this is in no way saying that people shouldn't list popular content creators if they enjoy them, nor is it a criticism of these content creators. All people enjoy all different kinds of content, different approaches, and are moved towards different arguments and different kinds and styles of arguments. Go with what you enjoy, but give these people a try, as you may find that you enjoy them also. Anyway, enough of that. Let's go on with the list. Okay, so I can hear you groaning now. This probably feels like shameless self-promotion on my part. After all, I'm part of the Answers in Reason crew, so it kind of feels like recommending myself. But this isn't a recommendation of the YouTube channel, even if I do think our content is worth checking out. This is a recommendation of the Twitter account itself. I'm not behind the Twitter account, and I don't have anything to do with the Twitter account. Joe is the guy behind the Twitter account, and he gets involved in discussions far more often than I do on Twitter. Always approaches the discussions in good faith, and he always discusses topics in good faith. So he's well worth a follow, in my opinion. He's someone I would recommend even if I wasn't part of the Answers in Reason crew. So, Philip is also one of the crew at Answers in Reason. He has his own Twitter account though, and he's a bright and well-informed guy. He has a lot of great ideas, and he's always willing to discuss them and willing to be challenged on them. He has a huge variety of interests when it comes to topics of discussion, especially within philosophy. So, if you're looking for good takes on arguments surrounding atheism and theism, then he's well worth a follow. He also discusses topics like morality and epistemology. He doesn't have a YouTube channel of his own yet, but hopefully one day we'll convince him. Lou, also known as Bearded Heretic, is also a regular on Answers in Reason, but he also runs his own YouTube channel under the name Bearded Heretic. He's a top bloke with a great amount of knowledge surrounding psychology and mental health. He can be found discussing topics surrounding atheism and theism too, though not necessarily in the sense of apologetics, counter-apologetics, and philosophy or religion. You can also find him discussing topics related to mind and psychology, and there's a lot to learn from him in those areas. We've been lucky enough to have 3 Vikings join us on a few of the answers in recent AMAs, and he is an absolutely top bloke. He often asks questions that get me to think about things in a very different way, and always very interesting questions. While his account is not specifically dedicated to atheism, he can often be found discussing some very interesting aspects surrounding belief and non-belief, the idea of God and gods, atheism, theism, and he also discusses things like evolution and other science topics. He always does it with a brilliant dose of humor as well, and who doesn't enjoy good humor? Emerson runs a podcast and a YouTube channel called WaldenPod, and there is a lot of content that involves discussions about atheism, Christianity, theism, counter-apologetics, and that kind of stuff. Though simply to describe him as that would not be doing his content justice. You can also find many discussions about epistemology, philosophy of mind, and much, much more. Like 3 Vikings, 1 Atheist, Emerson also has a great sense of humor when having discussions. RealAtheology are heavy hitters when it comes to discussing the philosophy of religion. Their discussions and arguments are of the highest quality, and each member is incredibly well informed. You can find them both on Twitter and on YouTube, and on their YouTube channel you can find them in discussion with and interviewing some of the top names in philosophy of religion, both on the atheist and theist side, as well as giving excellent arguments for atheism. You can find Chris, who also goes by Sixtra, on Twitter only. He can often be found discussing loads of different topics, ranging from metal to politics to religion. He's a really great guy and has a great sense of humor and taste in music. He's always willing to have a discussion about atheism and religion and explore his views on it. And he always does it in a calm and respectful manner as well. You can find King Frustrated both on Twitter and on YouTube. They do not focus solely on atheism and discuss all kinds of topics, and as with many other names on this list, always with a great sense of humor. You can find them discussing anything from politics to atheism to gaming. On the Frustrated Atheist channel, you can find lots of really interesting content regarding atheism and religion, as well as lots of great gaming content. You can find the Last Sith on Twitter. He's an absolutely awesome guy and has an absolutely awesome sense of humor and an MPhys in cosmology, which is pretty impressive. His content generally revolves around philosophy, science, and Star Wars, and who can really complain about that? Though you can also find discussions about politics as well as atheism and theism. Lone Wolf is an absolutely top bloke, and a pleasure to have discussions with, though your mileage may vary, of course. Personally, I always enjoy my discussions with him, and I can chat to him about lots of different topics from films to philosophy to atheism. He has a lot of great takes and makes a lot of very interesting arguments. His YouTube channel contains lots of great gaming streams. Dr. Theosib is a brilliant guy, and I could only dream about being half as smart as he is. You can find him on Twitter discussing topics like science, atheism, and theism. He makes a lot of great arguments, and there's always something that can be learned from him. You can find Rev shining his light in the deepest, darkest corners of Twitter. His jokes and his comic takes often brighten up my day and are always good for a laugh. But don't let that fool you though. He has a lot of great takes when it comes to both theism and atheism, and he can often be found fighting the bad takes we see from both sides. Counter-Apologist can be found on both Twitter and on YouTube. His YouTube channel contains a lot of great material concerning, as his username implies, counter-apologetics. It has a main focus on Christian apologetics, and you can also find him in discussion with apologists as well as videos on apologetics. He's a very useful resource for those wanting to argue better against Christianity and Christians. Ben's channel on YouTube is another excellent resource for counter-apologetics. His main focus is on giving commentary on the Bible using academic resources. These are aimed at helping atheists better understand and argue against those making claims based off the Bible. You can also find him on Twitter involved in lots of great discussions, and he has helped me understand certain ideas much better. Leo is absolutely brilliant, and another person I could never even be half as great as. You can find him on Twitter and on YouTube, and you can also find him guest appearing on other people's YouTube channels. You can also find some of his debates on modern day debates. He has a great ability to make the most complicated of topics in science and philosophy digestible for everybody. You can find him discussing science, philosophy, atheism, and theism. Ben is one of the team behind RealAtheology, but he also does a lot of material on his own. You can find him on Twitter, where he posts and discusses lots of great arguments for atheism. He also does lots of debates that can be found on YouTube. In these debates, he argues for atheism against apologists, and he's also been involved in some very interesting devil's advocate style debates. Geoff is one of those people you should just subscribe to. He's a very genuine YouTuber with little interest in providing a persona. He just is himself. That alone makes him worthy of support, as there's really not enough of that on social media, especially YouTube. You can find him both on Twitter and on YouTube, and there you will find him discussing whatever takes his fancy, including discussions about atheism and theism. Go follow and subscribe to him now. The Non-Alchemist is another counter-apologetics channel, and again, another brilliant one. You can find lots of great arguments against Christianity both on his YouTube and in his discussions on Twitter. You can also find lots of discussions with apologists and responses to apologists on his YouTube channel as well. Brina, like Geoff, is another rare, genuine, and authentic YouTuber, though they can also be found on Twitter. You can find many videos relating to atheism and Christianity on their channel. However, to describe Brina simply as an atheist content creator would not be doing justice. You can also find many videos relating to mental health, power imbalances, critiques of popular YouTubers, and many more topics, with each video containing a lot of interesting and well thought out content. Danish Debater is a very interesting and very thoughtful guy. You can find him on Twitter, where he discusses many different topics, including philosophy, atheism, and theism. He also makes a great diplomat and can often be found breaking arguments caught in a deadlock or that have got out of control. He always has something interesting to add to any conversation. He also has a YouTube channel, though it only contains a few videos as of now. Though he seems to be a lot less active than he used to be, and appears to be taking a break from Twitter, secular Outpost's discussions and arguments are of the highest quality, and there's lots that can be learned from him. He also has a blog containing lots of great stuff, and you can find the link to it in his Twitter bio. Alistair is a really bright philosophy student, and you can find him on Twitter. He's often involved in discussions surrounding philosophy of religion, as well as things like morality and philosophy of mind. We've been very lucky to have him join us on a couple of streams on the Answers in Reason channel. If you're looking for thoughtful content about the philosophy of religion, then Alistair is more than worthy of a follow. There shouldn't really be any need to introduce theoretical bullshit. He was involved in the original wave of atheist YouTubers, and he's been around for a very long time. These days, he tends to get involved in the more philosophical side of discussions about atheism and theism. You can find many interesting discussions centered around theism and atheism on his Twitter account, as well as on his YouTube channel. While there's many things I disagree with Cease to Know and J-Mike about, there's no denying that they are an interesting channel. They discuss lots of great topics involving science, philosophy, skepticism, atheism, and theism. They also have video reviews of other YouTube videos, as well as discussions with other YouTubers and scientists. Dallas, along with being a great guy, also has a great YouTube channel and Twitter account. He has a great sense of humor and brings that to his YouTube videos. His channel contains a wide variety of very entertaining content, and it covers all kinds of content, including atheism, theism, skepticism, and even atheists themselves. Like with Axioms on Trial, there's a lot I disagree with Shane about. But that doesn't stop his content from being interesting. Shane pushes for a better understanding of epistemology from atheists, as well as pushing for a higher quality of skepticism. And these are things I can most certainly get behind. You can find all kinds of content on his YouTube channel, including topics like epistemology, skepticism, atheism, and theism. And he deserves far more subscribers than he has. Tim has annoyed and been blocked by more atheists than I have, which is pretty impressive. You can often find him on Twitter correcting bad historical takes from atheists. And that's also what you can find on his YouTube channel. If you're interested in history and interested in finding out where many atheists go wrong when discussing history, you cannot go wrong with his channel. Godless Granny runs a great YouTube channel with lots of interesting content and lots of interesting discussions. Her channel is an atheist-focused channel and has an activist lean to it. You can find videos of her responding to Christian content that can be found on YouTube, as well as having discussions with Christians and atheists alike. Something that I find very interesting and think is well worthy of support are her discussions revolving around the atheist community and community building. Gutsick Gibbon is absolutely fantastic. You might have seen her debates on the channel Modern Day Debates, where you can find her arguing against creationism and defending evolution. She also has her own channel where she discusses the same kind of thing. There's a wealth of information and knowledge to be found there, as well as a host of other types of content. There is even a really entertaining review of Night at the Creationist Museum there. Okay, so this one and the next one that follows are slightly different. While Ben has a Twitter, he doesn't really post to it in the same way that he engages on Facebook. Ben can often be found involved in discussion in various Facebook groups dedicated to debate and discussion between atheists and theists. You can also find him in the group that he manages called Debate Faith. He has a wealth of great arguments and a wealth of knowledge that I could only wish for. Like Ben, Brent can mainly be found on Facebook. He runs a group called Believer, Non-Believer Discussion and Philosophical Discourse. His group is dedicated towards raising the bar of discussion between non-believers and believers. It doesn't really contain the usual hostilities that can be found in most groups dedicated to discussion and debate between atheists and theists. Brent is a really genuine guy, very friendly, and has a great sense of humor. And like Sixtra that I mentioned earlier, Brent also has awesome taste in music too. Okay, so there's a few names that I think are worthy of mention here, but they don't really fit into the list of previously mentioned names. And that's because while they have Twitter accounts, they either don't really post to them or don't really focus on atheism there. However, they're all atheists of the highest caliber and most certainly worth atheists taking some time to check out. There is a lot that can be learned from them. Stephen Law is a philosopher that has a focus on the philosophy of religion, atheism, skepticism, and humanism. He has a number of fantastic books available, and many of them are very reasonably priced. All of them are very easy to follow. He has a talent for making the material easily digestible for everyone. Some of his books are introductions to philosophy for adults and teens, but he does also have books discussing humanism and skepticism. He's also well known for the very interesting argument, The Evil God. If you do a search for Stephen Law on YouTube, you will find videos of him in discussion and debates with others, as well as lots of interviews and that kind of thing. He's one of my favorite philosophers. Just as with Stephen Law, Graham Oppy has a Twitter account, though I very rarely see him use it, unfortunately. And just as with Stephen Law, Graham Oppy is a philosopher with a focus on philosophy of religion. He too has many amazing books focused on atheism and theism, with many great arguments for atheism, as well as books on the best ways to argue against God. He is considered a formidable atheist opponent by many Christian philosophers and apologists. Though, in a very strange and ironic twist of events, I've seen atheists describing him as an idiot and someone that doesn't know anything about atheism. Like with Stephen Law, you can find a lot of discussions, debates, and interviews with Graham Oppy if you do a search on YouTube. Again, he's another one of my favorite philosophers. As with the previous two names, C.M. Lorkowski is a philosopher, and he's involved in the philosophy of religion. He has done a lot of great work involving atheism, including books and journal articles. Recently, he did an interview with the previously mentioned RealAtheology team, and it was an absolutely fantastic interview and discussion. While the interview is quite long, it contains a lot of great information and is really interesting. A search on your favorite search engine or on YouTube will bring up lots of stuff from him. And he also has a YouTube channel that you can check out. Okay, so that's the end of the shoutouts. There was a lot more names on there than I realized until I actually started recording this. So I apologize for that, and the video is obviously a bit longer than I intended. But there was a lot of great names to shout out there, and a lot of great stuff that people should check out. Hopefully you might find some of them interesting, and perhaps maybe this might encourage you to do your own kind of shout out video, as some of these smaller names deserve some focus and attention. Thanks for watching and listening, and hopefully I'll see you again.